Hello and welcome to the next easy tutorial. And in this tutorial we will talk about reduce helper method. It was introduced in ECMAScript 5.1 that was released in 2011. And it is one of the array helper methods. We will discuss how reduce helper method differs from other helper methods, such as map, for each, and so on. We will discuss how it works. And of course, we will look at some examples of the reduce helper method. Let's get started. Let's first look at the diagram and discuss how reduce method works under the hood. Same as other array helper methods such as for each, map, includes, sum, and so on, reduce is applied to the array. But in other methods, each element is processed independently. It means that we iterate through the elements in the array and process each element one by one. But in reduce helper method, there is a special variable that is usually called accumulator. And let's look at this diagram and discuss how reduce helper method works. Reduce helper method, same as other methods, requires callback function. And this callback function has two mandatory parameters, in this example called accumulator and current value. And two other parameters are optional, and they are index and array. What is this accumulator? In each iteration, this callback function receives not just element of the array, but also accumulator. And after the end, it returns next accumulator that is passed to the next callback function. When reduce helper method starts, it takes first element and initial accumulator and passes them to the callback function. Then this callback function returns something, and this something is called updated accumulator. We take updated accumulator and second element of the array and pass them to the callback function, and so on. Finally, we take last element in the array, element n, and updated accumulator, and pass them again to the callback function. And when this function returns, we get updated accumulator, and that will be final accumulator that is returned as a result of the reduce helper method. That is the process of reduce method. It means that reduce helper method is applied to the input array, that is array of elements, and elements can be numbers, strings, objects, other arrays, and so on. And at the end, we get accumulator. And this accumulator has usually specific variable type. And if we, for example, sum numbers in the input array, then accumulator will be number, that will be sum of all elements. If we, for example, transform input array to another array, then accumulator will be array. If we take input array and want to construct other object from this array, then accumulator will be an object. And this object may accumulate some properties of the elements of the input array. So again, we take input array that contains elements and produce just one variable. And this variable may have any JavaScript variable type, such as number, string, boolean, or object. Okay, let's look at the example of the reduce helper method. And first example will be classic example where we will sum elements in the array. Okay, let's get started. Let's create an array, and this array will contain several numbers. I'll use const to declare array, and let's name this array my numbers. And it will be equal to array where we will have several elements 4, 10, 5, and 3. And let's simply sum all those numbers in the array. Of course, it is possible to use traditional for loop, but I don't recommend you to use for loops when you process elements in the array. There are a lot of array helper methods dedicated to this purpose. And they are for each, map, includes, reduce, and so on. So please never use for loops. And I don't want even to show you how to sum those values using for loop. Let's immediately try to apply reduce method. For this purpose, I'll create new function, and I will use arrow function expression assigned to the variable. Let's do that. Const sum numbers equal to arrow function expression, and this arrow function expression will have just one parameter. That's why I can omit parentheses here. And let's call it, for example, array of numbers. Then comes fat arrow, and then body of the arrow function expression. I will have only one expression inside of this arrow function expression, and result of this expression will be returned implicitly. That's why I don't require here curly braces. I will just type array of numbers dot reduce and parentheses. And here inside of those parentheses, I need to add callback function that will process each element in the array. Remember that this callback function must have at least two parameters, accumulator and current value. Accumulator comes first. Okay, let's add those parameters here. If arrow function expression has more than one parameter, we need to add parentheses here. First parameter will be called sum, and second one will be called number. Then comes fat arrow, and here let's implicitly return sum plus number, like this. In a moment I will explain what is happening here. And let's try to call this sum numbers function with this my numbers array. And let's print to the console a result of this call. Console log sum numbers, and here will be my numbers array as a single argument. Let's save and see what we will get. We will get 22 here, and that is a sum of those four elements. What is happening here? We apply reduce method to the array of numbers, and array of numbers will be equal to my numbers in this function call. And this reduce helper method has one argument, that is the arrow function expression with two parameters, sum and number. In order to understand what is happening here inside of this arrow function expression, let's add one more statement here. And if I add one more statement here, I need to add here curly braces. I'll copy this part and add here explicit return. Now it is statement. And here I'll add console log. And here I'll print following. I'll use template literals here. I'll print sum is $sign curly braces sum, and number is $sign curly braces and number, like this. Let's save and see what will happen. Now I get 3 console log messages here. We have 3 iterations, but we have 4 elements in the array. What is happening now? Notice that first message in the console is sum is 4 and number is 10. It means that at the first iteration here, we take second element in the array, and sum is 4, that is equal to first element in the array. What happens here? It seems that we simply skip this first step. That's because we have not passed initial accumulator, that is optional. Initial accumulator should be second argument in this reduce method call. But we pass here only this arrow function expression as a single argument. That's why reduce helper method skips first step and sends to the second iteration this one. First element as accumulator and second element as element. Let's try to add initial accumulator here. And in this example, initial sum will be 0, like this. Let's save, and now I get 4 console log messages. It means that now we process all elements in the array, without skipping first one. And initial sum is 0. It is equal to this number that we are passing as a second argument in the reduce helper method. If I change this number to, for example, 10 and save, I get 32 as a result, and initial sum will be 10. It means that this number is initial accumulator or initial state of the reduce helper method. Okay, let's get back to 0. Okay, Let's summarize what is happening in this example. I have declared my numbers array that contains 4 numbers. I have used here const because I'm not going to reassign this my numbers variable in the future. Then I have used anonymous arrow function expression, here it is, and assigned it to some numbers variable. I have also used const for the same reason. I'm not going to reassign this variable. This arrow function expression has one parameter, array of numbers. And this arrow function expression implicitly returns result of this reduceHelper method call. In this reduceHelper method call, I have 2 arguments. First one is arrow function expression, and second one is simply number. This number is initial accumulator. This arrow function expression has 2 parameters, sum and number. Sum represents accumulator that is sent from one iteration to the next one. We take initial sum, perform operations inside of this arrow function expression, and then send next sum to the next iteration, and so on. And result of the last callback function will be returned as a result of this reduceHelper method. Inside of this arrow function expression, we have 2 statements. First one is a console log, and here you see result of this console log statement for each iteration. And second statement is return sum plus number. We take previous sum, add current number, that is current element of the array, and return result. And this result will be passed to the next iteration as sum variable. Okay, let's comment this example and let's look at another example. In this example, I will have array of objects, and each object is post. And each post has title and numbers of likes and dislikes. And we will sum number of likes and dislikes of all objects in the input array. Okay, let's do that. I'll declare an array called myPosts, and it will be equal to array of objects. And first object will be following: title, JavaScript is awesome, likes 5, dislikes 2. Let's copy this part and let's create 2 more objects, second one and third one. Here title will be how reduce method works, and it will have 3 likes and 0 dislikes. And last title will be should I use ES6. And this post will have 10 likes and 4 dislikes. Okay, now our goal is to iterate this myPost array and produce single object that will have 2 fields, likes and dislikes, where likes will be sum of all those likes, and it should be 18, and dislikes will be sum of dislikes, 2, 0 and 4, totally it will be 6. Okay, let's create this function. Same as before, I will use anonymous arrow function expression assigned to the variable, and I will use const to declare this variable. Const, and let's call it posts, likes and dislikes, like this. And on the right side of this assignment will be anonymous arrow function expression with 1 parameter, and it will be array of posts. And let's call it simply posts. Again, I omit parentheses here because I have single parameter. Posts, then third arrow, and then body of the function. Let's use curly braces, and let's add return statement. Return posts dot reduce. And here in this function call, I will pass 2 arguments. First one will be callback function, and second one will be initial accumulator. And in this example, initial accumulator will be object with 2 fields, likes and dislikes. Okay, let's add this second argument first. It will be an object. First field will be likes, 0, and second one will be dislikes, also 0. Those are initial values of likes and dislikes in the resulting object. Okay, let's now add first argument. And this first argument is callback function. It will have two parameters. First one will be called quantities of likes. Quantities of likes. And this variable will represent this object. And those values will be changed in each iteration. And second parameter will be post. Then comes fat arrow. And here let me add curly braces that represent body of this arrow function expression. Here I will use explicit return, and I will return an object. And this object will be quantities of likes for the next iteration. Okay, let's add this object here. And this object will have two fields, likes and dislikes. Likes. And we will change it in the following way. We will take previous accumulator, that is quantity of likes, and take its property likes, and increment it by post.likes. It means that we will take previous value of the likes field in the quantity of likes accumulator and add post.likes. This value or this value. That is the first property. And second property in the object will be dislikes. And it will be equal to quantities of likes dot dislikes plus post dot dislikes. And that's all. Let's now try to call this function with this myPostArray. And let's log result of the function call to the console. Console log. And here will be call to this function. And here will be single argument, that is myPostArray. Okay, let's try to save and see what we will get here. In the results, I get an object with two fields, likes 18 and dislikes 6. And that is exactly what we have expected in this example. Let's summarize what is happening here. We have declared myPostArray, and it consists of objects. And our goal was to count quantity of likes and dislikes across all objects in the post array. And for this purpose, we have created postLikes and dislikes function. That is actually a variable that has arrow function expression assigned to it. And this arrow function expression returns result of the reduce method call. This call has two arguments. This arrow function expression and this object. And this object is initial accumulator. It has two fields, likes 0 and dislikes also 0. Those are initial values of those two properties. And now inside of this arrow function expression that has two parameters, quantities of likes and post, we increment values of those fields. And we increment them by post likes and post dislikes. And then we return object. And this object is passed as quantities of likes to the next iteration. Okay, let's create one more function. And this function will accumulate only titles of all objects. And it will return array of titles. Let's add one more function here. Const post titles. And it will be equal to arrow function expression, again single parameter, post. And here let's implicitly return result of the reduce method call. Post.reduce. And here will be two arguments. First one arrow function expression, and second one will be initial accumulator. And second argument will be array, empty array. And we will push titles to this array. And finally, we will return array that will contain all titles of all posts of the initial array. Okay, let's add callback function here. Same as before, it will have two parameters. First one, let's call all titles. And it is accumulator that holds all titles of all posts. and second one will be post. Then comes fat arrow, and here I'll add curly braces. It is body of this arrow function expression, and here I'll do following. I need to add post.title. I need to add each title of each post to the all titles array. That is our accumulator. I can use push all titles dot push, and here I'll push post.title. And now I need to return updated all titles accumulator. I need to add here this return because this result of this callback function will be passed as all titles variable to the next iteration. Okay, return all titles, like this. Now let's try to call this function down below. I'll call it here and log result of the operation to the console. Post titles, and here will be single argument my posts. Let's save and look at the result. And here is expected result. Array that contains 3 titles. JavaScript is awesome, how reduce method works, and should I use ES6? Let's summarize what happens here in this second function. Here we use empty array as initial accumulator. And inside of the callback function here, we push post.title to this array. And finally, reduce helper method will return resulting array that contains all post titles. Okay, let's summarize what we have discussed in this tutorial. We talked about reduce helper method, and unlike other methods such as map, for each, includes, and so on, this method maintains state. And this state is called accumulator usually, and it is passed from one iteration to next one and so on, till the end of the reduce method call. And finally, resulting accumulator is returned back as a result of the reduce method call. If you don't specify initial accumulator, that is second argument in the reduce method call, then first iteration, this one, will be skipped, and element 1 will be passed as accumulator here to the second iteration. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If so, thumbs up, if no, thumbs down. Leave a comment, ask any questions, and please subscribe to this channel. I'll post more videos like this. See you and good luck. Bye bye.